Margaret didn't know where she was. She stood in her nightgown at the edge of a forest, bare feet pressed against cold earth, staring at trees that looked familiar, foreign all at once. The moon hung low and heavy above her, painting everything in silver and shadow. Somewhere behind her, she could hear voices calling a name she thought might be hers, but the sounds felt distant, like echoes from another. How did I get here? The question floated through her mind like smoke, impossible to grasp. She'd been somewhere, doing something. It was a house, her house, with yellow curtains in the kitchen and a garden where she grew. What did she grow? The memory slipped away before she could catch it. The voices were getting louder now, more frantic. They frightened her. She didn't know why, but something in her chest tightened with panic at the sound of them. Without thinking, she turned and walked deeper into the forest. The trees closed around her like a cathedral, their branches forming arches overhead. Her feet found a narrow path, worn smooth by deer and time. It felt right to walk, so she did, one foot in front of the other. She could do that much, even when everything else was fog, confusion. I'm looking for something, she thought. Someone. But who? The forest grew darker the deeper she went. Roots grabbed at her ankle, branches caught in her white hair, pulling it loose from the braid. Someone who had woven that more. Or was it yesterday? Time had become as slippery as memory, impossible to hold. She was so lost in the labyrinth of her own mind that she didn't notice the wolf until it was directly in front of her. Margaret stopped, swaying slightly. The wolf sat on the path like a sentinel, its massive frame radiating quiet power. Its fur was the color of smoke and silver, impossibly luminous against the dark forest. Its eyes caught the moonlight and held it, twin mirrors of amber intelligence that seemed to look not just at her, but into her. "Hello," Margaret said, because speaking to animals seemed perfectly natural in this strange dream she was living. The wolf tilted its head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Not threatened, but seen. Truly seen, in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The fog in her mind cleared just slightly, and she remembered something important. "I'm afraid." The wolf stood, its shoulders nearly reaching her waist, and took 3 measured steps forward, closing the distance between them to barely 6 feet. Then it did something extraordinary. It lowered its great head, almost like a bow, before turning to look back the way Margaret had come. It made a soft sound in its throat, a gentle, questioning rumble. "I can't go back," Margaret said, surprised by the certainty in her voice. I don't know the way." Wasn't entirely true, or maybe it was completely true. She didn't know anymore. The wolf watched her for a long moment, then made a decision. It turned and began walking, not back the way Margaret had come, but deeper along the path. After a few steps, it stopped and looked back at her, waiting. It wanted to follow. And because Margaret had lost the ability to question impossibilities, because her grip on what was real and what was dream had loosened months, years ago, she followed. The wolf led her through the forest with careful precision, always staying just ahead, always visible. When the path forked, it would stop and wait for her to catch up before choosing a direction. When Margaret stumbled over a root, the wolf would freeze until she'd righted herself. It moved like liquid shadow through the darkness, and something about following it made Margaret feel less lost, even though she had no idea where they were going. Time lost meaning. They could have walked for minutes or hours. Margaret's feet were bleeding now, cut by stones and thorns, but she felt no pain. The fog in her mind would thicken and thin like a living thing, and with each clearing, fragments of memory would surface. A man's laugh, warm and deep, small hands holding hers. "Grandma, look." The smell of bread baking. A name, Robert. Robert. The grief that came with that name was so sudden and sharp that Margaret gasped, stumbling to her knees on the path. The wolf turned immediately and trotted back to her, circling her once, then sitting close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from its body, close enough that she could see the individual guard hair's thick coat. "He's gone," Margaret whispered to the wolf, the words feeling both ancient. "Robert's gone. I keep forgetting, and then I remember, and it's like losing him all over it." The wolf leaned forward and, with impossible gentleness, pressed its cold nose against her hand. Margaret began to cry, not the confused tears of fear she'd shed earlier, but something deeper. The grief of a woman who'd loved and lost, who was losing even the memories of that love to the cruel theft of failing mom. She cried for Robert, dead 3 years now. She cried for her independence, her home, her own name that sometimes felt like a stranger's. She cried for the woman she used to be, sharp and capable, now reduced to wandering forests in her nightgown. The wolf waited, patient, present, its amber eyes never leaving her face. When Margaret's tears finally slowed, when the storm in her chest had calmed to something bearable, the wolf stood. It touched her hand once more with its nose, then began walking again. This time, though, the direction felt different. The forest began to thin. Through the trees, Margaret could see lights, artificial, electric human lights. The wolf led her to the edge of the tree line and stopped. Beyond the forest was a house. Her house. Yellow curtains in the windows. The garden she planted with roses and tomatoes, now overgrown and wild. On the porch stood a woman, younger, dark-haired, her face etched with fear and exhaustion. Jennifer, Margaret thought, the name arriving like my daughter. Jennifer was holding a phone, talking rapidly to someone, her free hand pressed against her. Behind her, police cars sat in the driveway, their lights off but engines still running. The search party. They'd been looking for her. Margaret looked down at the wolf. It sat at the forest's edge, a creature of wilderness, seemingly reluctant to go further into the world of humans and their houses, their lights. "Thank you," Margaret said softly. "I don't know why you helped me. I don't know why you're here, but thank you." The wolf regarded her with those amber eyes, ancient and knowing. Then it did something that Margaret would remember clearly, even months later when so many other memories had dissolved into mist. It leaned forward and touched its nose to her hand one final time. And in that touch, Margaret felt something transfer, not physical, but real nonetheless. A gift, a message. You're not alone. Even in confusion, even in fear, even in the fog, you are not alone. Then the wolf turned and melted back into the forest, its silver coat disappearing into the shadows like it had never been there at all. M.O.M. Jennifer's scream pierced the night as she spotted Margaret at the forest's edge. She ran, stumbling down the porch steps, across the yard, crashing into her mother with enough force to nearly knock them both down. She was crying, holding Margaret's face in her hand, checking for injuries, wrapping her in a blanket someone had thrust at her. "Mom, oh God, Mom, we've been looking everywhere. You can't just... Why did you? Where did you?" "I got lost," Margaret said simply. It was true in more ways than one. "How did you find your way back?" Jennifer asked, pulling her mother close, her voice breaking. "You were so deep in the forest. We had search teams, we thought." Margaret looked back at the tree line, at the darkness between the trees. Nothing moved there now. No flash of silver. No amber eyes. Just the forest, keeping its secrets. "I had help," Margaret said. Jennifer assumed she meant the voice in her head, some last vestige of her former capable self that had guided her home. She nodded, not understanding but grateful nonetheless, and led her mother back to the house. But Margaret knew the truth. Over the following weeks, as her daughter installed locks on the doors and her doctor-adjusted medication, as well-meaning people discussed memory care facilities and proper supervision, Margaret would often sit by her window and look out at the forest. And sometimes, especially at dusk, she would see it. A flash of silver moving between the trees. A silhouette that could have been a large dog, but wasn't. And once, just once, she saw it clearly. The wolf, sitting at the forest's edge, watching the house. Watching her, Margaret raised her hand in a small wave. The wolf's tail moved once, acknowledgement, perhaps, or goodbye, or simply "I see you," before it turned and disappeared into the green. Jennifer noticed her mother smiling at the window. "What are you looking at, Mom?" Margaret turned from the forest, from the secret she kept like a treasure. "Nothing, dear. Just remembering." And for once on this particular day, in this particular moment, she was... Not all rescues happen in blizzards or disasters. Some happen in the quiet moments, in the spaces between memory and forgetting. Some happen when a mind begins to lose its way, and something wild and knowing chooses to be a light in the darkness. The wilderness doesn't just test us. Sometimes, impossibly, inexplicably, it carries us home.